Welcome to the beautiful Riddings Fishery. Now, this is quite away from me. It's over a 2-hour drive, but it's worth every single mile. Now, I've brought you here today with Sonubaits cameras to run you through winter silverfish fishing. It's something that's become, I think, extremely popular. I think it's brilliant. It makes you a better angler to start with. So if you don't like your silverfish fishing, get into it because it's quite, sometimes it can be quite technical, but a lot of time it is quite simple. Now, I brought you to Riddings because for me, it fits round what I've been doing recently. So it's a bit like a diary piece, this one, about like where I've been going, what I've been doing. Obviously, every fishery is slightly different. Some fisheries you can catch on worms during the winter. Some fisheries you can't. And that's what makes me just wanting to keep doing it because it changes. So I brought you to Riddings today because it fits perfectly into what I want to show you guys for the Sonubaits cameras today. Well, I think we all know by now and in the last few matches that I fish for silvers, without groundbait, you probably wouldn't even bother turning up. That's how deadly groundbait is. And I can't wait to get going. We're on, I think, called the Match Lake. I know there's skimmers in here. There's some roach. Skimmers are going to be the main target. I can't wait. I've put my gear back. I've put my gear down, so I'm going to set some gear up. But most importantly, mix my groundbait up ready for today. And I'm going to run you through everything that you people need to know about catching winter silverfish. Right, mix my groundbait up now. So I just put my box net down, had a little chat. Groundbait is massive. Over the last few weeks, I've been doing some silverfish fishing. I've also got back from Tamar from a festival down there. And without groundbait, I could probably say I would have caught literally nothing. It is massive. Doesn't matter what sort of fishing you're doing, but we're fishing for silvers today at this beautiful fishery. I'm gonna stick with the groundbait that I've been using because the changeover period from summer to autumn into winter can have a massive effect on the fish. And recently, if you look at the match venues where I've been going, the fishing has dropped off really, even though it's been quite mild. You know, we're into November, you know, it's still mild. The fish change their habits, but you've got to use the right groundbait. Now, two groundbaits, my all-time favourite, and it has been since, luckily, Sonubaits brought it out, is Thatchers. Now, there's obviously got your dark, you've got the natural, and they've got the green. Green for me, since sort of Sonu started doing green groundbaits, I think it just fits in around my fishing and also the fisheries that I go to. I've looked at the water today. It's still got quite a bit of colour in it. You know, it's not into the middle of winter yet. And like I've always said with groundbaits, try and use a base mix. Now, Thatchers is my base mix when I come to feeder fishing, pole fishing, and obviously, you know, it's great for carp as well, but it's also mega for silverfish fishing. Now, I'm going to use the whole bag, so it's a kilo. So let's stick that in the bucket. So use that as your base mix. It's no different to what I use like match method mix for. If you're going method feeder fishing, use match method mix as your base mix and add other different groundbaits to it. But obviously we're not using match method mix today. Now, one of the lovely groundbaits that I got into probably 18 months ago, 2 years ago, is Super Crush Green. This is a pellet that actually Sonubaits get specially made for them. They grind it down into this stuff. It's a bit like Expander. So like, it's a bit like Crust Expander, but it's green. It's a beautiful groundbait. It smells lovely. And I'm actually going to use this in my Pro Thatchers. Now, you can measure it out. We all know by now that 1 kilo of groundbait is 3 pints of groundbait. So what I'm going to do, I don't need loads of groundbait today. I think this is going to be absolutely ample, but you never know. You never know. I would never go to a venue. I always want to mix a bit of groundbait up because if it's not happening, sometimes you've got to put a big volume of bait in to get the fish to respond, but you don't know from one day to the next. So what I'm going to do, so I know that I've got 3 pints of Pro Thatchers, and I'm going to put 2 pints of Super Crush Green in. And once you get your little measurements sorted, to stop you wasting bait, just use measurements. It's a lot easier. Morning. So mix that round dry, just to get the 2 ground baits mixed together. Now water wise, I've got 5 pints of ground bait in there. I'm not sure, because when you're doing this sort of mixing, I'm going to put a pint straight in, see what happens. Straight away, it's not enough. Put a bit more in. I want to make this like a bit of a soup, because I want to leave it. I know it looks horrendous when it's like this. When you look at that, you think, my God. But give it a good mix round like that. So don't worry about the lumps in that. As long as all that dry ground bait's got water in it. That's the name of the game, really. Make sure you're getting all the edges of the bucket. And it's as simple as that. Now I'm going to leave that, set my gear up, plumb up, come to that. It's going to be the last thing that I do before I start fishing. And I'm going to use, if Zolt could pass me that riddle, that green riddle, there's something else I do during the winter months, thank you Zolt, is use the smaller Preston riddle. And let me tell you, when you're fishing for silvers, you want your ground bait absolutely A1. Sticking it through that makes a huge difference. It's a bit more time consuming to get it through that small riddle, but it makes all the difference. So I'm going to leave that, get set up, I'll get back to it, obviously riddle it through, and I'll show you the sort of end ground bait just before we're going to start fishing. Okay, just finishing me worms off now. Now, coming to this venue previously on a few times, I know worms work really well, but in the winter time on some venues they don't work, and that's just the way it is. But that's the sort of things you need to try and find out. Never write worms off. It doesn't matter whether it's freezing cold, especially if you go to a venue with a mixed fishery, so you've got eyed, roach and skimmers. Worms can be amazing, but like I said, it doesn't work. And that's the sort of question I get asked quite a bit actually, is, Des, do you think worms would work? And I'm like, well, I don't know, because I don't know that venue, but you've got to try them. I know, coming to Riddings before, like I said, worms are a very good bait, especially with casters and maggots combined with that. Now, I'm going to keep it nice and simple for you guys today. I'm fishing 13 metres. I've got 2 lines exactly the same. So the same depth on a slight angle. Luckily, I can see a black float. If you can get away with a black float, try and use a black float, because you can see every tiny indication. It's such a good colour to use. Obviously, if you've got the shaded areas, you can't do it. Now, what I'm going to do is what I do on a lot of venues, and what I've been doing recently on some of the venues I've been, is have a sort of, not a negative line, but a line where I don't put a big volume of bait in. But I always have a line where I think, I'll tell you what, I'm going to put a bit of bait in there, because it might just be one of them days when they just won't feed on a small volume of bait. They want a big volume of bait. Now, in that EVA bowl, I've got 4 big handfuls of the mix that I've done. Obviously, I've pushed that through a riddle. That mix now is like silk. So it's been pushed through that green riddle. It's beautiful. Look at that in there. Now, in there, I'm going to put a little bit of worm, a few casters, and a few dead maggots. Now, I might not go on that line for, if I was fishing a match, for instance, I might not go on it for an hour and a half to 2 hours. I might not even go on it until right at the end of the match, but I've got a volume of bait in there where I think if the fish are in that funny mood, I can go on there and I might be able to catch. And that's what's happened to me recently. So I'm going to put just a little blob of that worm in there, very little. I'm going to put half a handful of casters. So there's not a lot of bait in there. It's like 95% ground bait at least. So I'm using the ground bait just to put a few freebies in. And I'll just put a few dead maggots. It's very little. You can vary that, obviously. So that's done. Now, my other mix, which is what going to be sort of the line where I'm going to be starting on, that's going to be more of a sort of, you know, more worms and less ground bait. So I'm going to put a blob of that worm in there. I'm going to put a little pinch of casters, and I'm going to add enough of that Pro Thatchers and Super Crush green. Honestly, if you can get this right, it's deadly. It's like what we call like a worm bomb. And you mix that around. So you've got enough ground bait to make that like, it's like a bit like a stodge. As you can see that, I can push that down. It's just like a wet stodge, but there's quite a lot of worm in that. It's a great way of fishing. You don't need loads of bait, and it can catch you fish all day long. So what I'm going to do first off is get that stodgy ball. Now you can vary this like you can with any other bait. You could put a ball in like that. I'm going to start on this line, so I'm not going to put a big ball in. But say for instance I had another short line, I might want to put a bigger ball of this in, because I'll probably be leaving it a little bit longer. But I'm going to start off with a ball like that. You can see all that. Look at that juicy little bits of worm in there. I've chopped them quite fine as well. Like that, a few casters. Put that back for later. Now, let's get that ball in first off. You just roll it around in your hand a bit like that. Let's get that out. Now this is going to be sort of my short starting line. I wouldn't call it negative line. It's just a line where I can start. So I've got myself marked up like that. I know when you see that, you think, oh God almighty, what's that going to catch? But let me tell you something, it's absolutely deadly. And then this, I'm going to make, now I'm only going to give it 2 squeezes, like that. You see my handprint still in it. This is going to be off to the left hand side. Something really important you've got to think about as well. I've got my little dolly butt out, and I've plumbed up past these 2 lines, and it's exactly the same depth. Now, if it comes to, and the fish aren't responding, you can go past your bait. It's absolutely deadly on some venues. Not every venue. I've been to Stafford Moor recently, and I've caught really well on that worm bomb. I've caught a few fish on my positive line, but I've had a brilliant run of fish fishing past my positive line, like that far past. It's something you've got to be aware of, because it catches you a lot of fish, especially when on them hard days, when the fish seem to lot of bite, they want to come to bait, but they've probably been caught a little bit and they're a bit, you know, a bit shy. But have that option, because it's huge. But we'll talk about bits like that as we go through the session. I'm just going to space them out a little bit. And then the last ball, I'm not even going to make a ball. I'm literally just going to fill my pot up with the remainder of loose. And just pat that down. And that'll come out like a sandcastle, sit there, go down, and it just explodes and makes a nice carpet. Some venues, it's maybe worth trying. Don't make any balls at all. Just put it in loose. I just wanted to put a few balls in there because it's quite deep. It's a bit deeper than what I thought, actually. So that's three soft balls and basically a cut for the loose. You see that there, it just lingers a little bit. And that'll make a nice big cloud. And also make a carpet on the bottom. Now, let's start fishing. I'll just run you through the rig. Well, we got 5 minutes, just to let that settle. Rig-wise, there ain't no better float than a F1 maggot. But we'll talk about the elastic. Now, there's the best elastic in my mind, it always has been for 30 plus years, is the original slip elastic. It doesn't matter whether it's the number 4, number 5, number 6. I normally stick with number 5 and 6, especially on commercial surface fishing. It just works so well. You can't beat it. I've got actually an 011 Powerline main line, because we are fishing for silvers. I've got a 4B16 F1 maggot. There's nothing better than that float. They, whatever you're fishing for, really, they're very, very good. And they're just as good as fishing for silvers. And then shot-wise, this is something I've been doing for quite some time, is what I call a stretch bulk. But the whole rig is stretched. So what I've got on there is 3 number 10s. And then I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 number 9s. Now what I do, the first shot sits above the loop-to-loop for your hook length. Roughly around about 3 inches, let's see. I'll give you a measurement. Because I don't really measure them at home. I just sort of do it by eye. So I'll get my little tape out. So 3 inches, absolutely bang on 3 inches. And as I go up, that gets slightly smaller. As you can see from that. You can do it by eye. If you want to do it by ruler, that's absolutely fine. But it's a great way of fishing. And the way I've sort of, it's going to be a bit awkward today, because there's quite a few leaves about at the minute. I'm hoping the wind's going to blow them away. But it's a great way of fishing. You get the added bonus of the, you know, to get the rig down, but you can flick it around a little bit and you can catch quite a lot of fish on the drop. Now I've got a 6-inch hook length of 09 Aki power to one of the new Silverfish hooks. It's called XFS, I think it's called, in a size 16. So 18/16s, 09 Aki power, that little setup there. Obviously, I've set a 4B16 up because it is actually a little bit over a top kit. So it's probably 6.5 to 7 foot deep. If it was a little bit shallower, and I just think the fishing's going to be good. I don't want to fish too small a float. So I'm going to start off, and I always do this, start off with a maggot, a single maggot. If something's going to get your bite pretty quick, a single maggot like that is a good starter. Let's see if I can get my rig out. That is a hazard of fishing in the autumn. We've had a storm yesterday and a lot of the leaves have come off. So let's get the rig out. Over top those. Once I get out there, there's not so many. I'm going to drop that straight down the plug hole. And fingers crossed we'll get a quick response. You never know. Hopefully oh yeah, that's pretty good actually. And at home, if you're doing rigs at home, I always shot them about half bristle. And that puts you normally pretty good. And really important, I can't stress this enough, about having your rig dotted down. And always have a couple of little number 11 stots on there. I'll probably have to take one of them off, because that is dotted down to an absolute pimple, which obviously helps you catch more fish. I can't stress that enough. That is super dotted down. And I'm just going to wait. Hopefully we'll get a quick response. Obviously, things you've got to think about is when you're going to top up this line. You can normally top up quite often, but you never know from one day to the next. And obviously loose feeding casters as well, over the top, or even cad potting casters in. So I'm not going to do that straight away. I'm just going to see what happens. Wait for some fish to turn up, and I will come back and actually take one of those little stots off in a minute. I always start on a maggot. I think it's probably one of the best hook baits to start with, and then you can work from there. But I will try and catch on worm heads or little bits of worm when the fish rock up. There's actually a little tiny bubble, so it might be a carp. It's well warm enough to, we've had a couple of frosts, but we've got a nice low pressure and the temperature is amazing for this time of year. But they can be crafty. Some days, oh, that was an indication. I'm just gonna find it a bit awkward with these leaves at the moment. Don't mess with it. Don't lift and drop. Just be patient. There you go. Just bite straight away then. little roach, I think. I'm just going to come back and take one of those little adjustment shot off. Always try and get 2 of those on. Just got to work over top those leaves. And then try and fold your rig over like that. It's something I've tried and teach a lot of people when I do some coaching, because it is massive. There you go. Oh, I don't know what that was. Definitely a bite, which is brilliant. There you go, little baby fish. Not fussed about that, it's just a bite. And obviously you can work from that. Oh, hey, look at that. That is a tiny. Once them skimmers move in though, they'll be gone. It's always nice to get a bite though, and sometimes in the winter time it's about getting your first bite, and sometimes it can take quite a long time for the fish to find your bait. I'll take him off. I've had these maggots there, but they've actually come back to life. They're that strong. You've really got to concentrate as well. You'll never bite straight away, never a little fish though. Slightly bigger roach. Wormhead will be the next stop. And it can be as quick as that. You know, go out there on a maggot. And obviously topping up, if you're getting bites, you've got to be thinking about topping up as well. Probably more regular or quicker. A few leaf problems. Now, let's put a hell of a worm on. There's a few of them little roach about at the minute. And straight away I'll be thinking at the time, I've got a couple of little roach, I wouldn't be looking to pick a catapult up and catapult anything at the minute. So let's put a bit of worm on. Probably about 1/2 inch. Them leaves are a bit of a pain at the moment. Let's see what happens with a bit of worm on. There you go, bit of worm. Slightly better sized fish. Nice little dumpy roach. It won't be long before I top up. If you're getting bites like that, I'll try and get them skimmers in your peg. You never know from one day to the next either how much worm you could actually go through. If these fish want a bit of bait, some days in the winter you can go through literally no worms at all. Other days you can go through quite a bit. Nice thing about a piece of worm is you can normally catch several fish, especially when you're catching roach like that. There's no messing about. Unhook the fish, back out. Just try and drop that between the leaves, like that. Oh yeah, quite a few roach there. Slightly better one. That might be a skimmer, that, a little skimmer. Or a little hybrid. There's some pommies in that in here. Little hybridy skimmery thing, 4 ounce. Looks like it's going to be a brilliant day anyway. So drop that straight down. Can't quite get it how I want it because there's a few leaves around. Little lifty. Now obviously just getting bites straight away is what you need. It doesn't matter what size they are, which is always great because you know they've come to that bait. There's a lot of little fish there at the moment. And in my mind, it won't be long before I top up with the same sort of ball of that worm bomb. Little roach, I think that. Just want that wind to turn and blow the leaves over the other side of the lake. Straight away, absolutely solid with little fish at the moment. I'm actually going to feed another little ball, even though we've only been fishing 10 minutes. And that's what I'll be doing. That's how I think. Get another little ball in. Try and make a nice little stodgy ball. Like that. That's the nice thing about having that positive line. It's something completely different to this. Because I don't come to this venue very often, it's nice to have that approach. That's it, the leaves are moving out of the way now. I see so many people not working hard enough at their fishing. You know, coming back, putting that little ball in. Especially when you're catching little roach like that, you know that they're gonna, you know, you want to top up, you want to try and get some better stamp fish. Save them other bits of worm for chopping up. See what happens now after that little ball. Straight on it. Slightly better stamp. That's the ones you want. They're alright, them. Little weight builders, them little dumpers. Like 2+2.5, 3 ounces, some of those. Be quite happy with that in the start of a match, I'll tell you. There's nothing better than actually catching like instantly in the winter. Nice fishing. Little skimmer. Look at them. Little bottle tops. Just don't know what's going to happen next when you're doing this sort of thing. That's what's so lovely about it. You know, you can go and catch little fish, then all of a sudden the bigger skimmers will rock up. Don't worry too much, because in a match you'd be like very happy about just putting fish in the net to start with. Get everything sorted as well, you know. Get your roller set up nice so it's all nice and smooth. The leaves are a bit of a nuisance, but I'm just trying to drop my rig literally where I've put the bait in, obviously. Yeah, it's slightly better fish straight there, look. That's what we want. I think at the moment, if you're looking to top up, very, very regular. Nice little skimmer. This is your bread and butter fish. This is what I've been catching on a lot of venues recently. And let me tell you something, you get them, you can soon put a weight together. That's probably 7-8 ounces. You might not look it, but when you weigh in, they do have weigh. Same bit of worm. Got a bit of worm on there. Probably like twice the size of a caster on that 16. Right, let's get back out there. There's a couple of tweaks you can do with your ground bait. Is obviously my main mat ground bait is like a nice sort of, not dry, just a like what I call a nice ground bait, so I can squeeze it into a ball like that and it sticks together. But if you wanted to, if you were getting loads of tiny fish all the time, sometimes it's worth making it like wet and sticky, just to stop any cloud coming off of it. A bit like what I'm feeding on this line, like that wet sort of stodgy mix. That's lovely fishing, that, isn't it? And this is what my sort of Stafford Moor, about the Stafford Moor fished, what they call a silver maniac. This is exactly how I fished. Catching these sort of fish, little dumpy roach, look. Even them roach love that ground bait. You know, like 3.5 ounces. And you make your own luck. You've got to remember, these are important fish. You know, one day I had 24 pounder skimmers. The next day I'll qualify for the final with just 11 pound. You know, and without those little important little roach and stuff, you wouldn't have got through. And then a couple of days I've got some nice bonus skimmers. I've had to top up. It was a little bit different down at Stafford because I've had to like use two of these lines. Two of the lines that I'm fishing with now, so like the little sticky ball of worm. So I've had to sort of top one up and go on to the other one. Where on the main line, I went on it and I could just nick a few fish, which it was a line that I didn't have to look after because I put like 4 or 5 balls in there. In my mind, I could just leave it. And if I wanted to go on it, I could nick a few fish. And that's what was important about having that like, sort of attacking line, if you like. I didn't have to mess about with it. I might have, could, get the catapult, fire a few casts over the top and just don't mess about with it. Where these lines, you've got to be topping up quite regular. So like even now, I caught a little baby one then. I know I caught that sort of 4-ounce roach last chuck, but I'll see what happens this chuck and I'll be on it again. I'll be feeding again. And I qualified for another final as well, Ace of Acorns on a Snake Lake, feeding exactly the same ground bait. On there, it's weird. It worms in the winter. Summertime, they work well. Winter time, they don't want to know it. It's proper strange. See, that was on the drop, that. And I'm going to put another little ball in now. Another nice little weight builder. Nice dumpy roach, look at that. Them hooks are absolutely brilliant. Honestly, I used them, another 4-ounce. Let's have one more. To me at the moment, picking up a catapult would be a waste of time. I think I'd just probably drag the fish that I don't really want to be catching, like maybe too many. There's a few of those little roach about, or there's a few leaves about as well at the minute. But I hope you get an understanding of like, how I top up as well. When the fishing's like this, do not be afraid to top up. That is brilliant fishing. It was a bit like this at Stafford. And all of a sudden they sort of ease off. I'll go back out and have another one, I think. But going back to Acorn, I fed the same mix. I actually fished 3 lines at Acorn. I fished right and left and one straight in front of me because it was one of them days where they were good fish. There wasn't that many little fish about, it was all good skimmers and they were really difficult to catch. I've had to fish small hooks, light lines, single pinky, double pinky, single maggot. But I had to rotate the lines, I had to put a little ball in, literally like that. With a little bit of loose. He's hanging on that one. Didn't know it was a leaf or a fish. So let's feed again. They're nice little weight builders though, these are. Little skimmer. Let's put another little ball in. So, we've only been going a little while, and this is my 3rd time of feeding. So you just have a think about what you're doing in your silverfish fishing. You'd be surprised. If I was here in a match today and this was happening, I'd be thinking I could go through quite a lot of worm, and obviously the ground bait mixing as well. As when the fish are feeding like that, it feels like you've got to keep going with your topping up. So really, that's my first little mix gone. I need to do another mix now. So another blob of worms, a few casters, and just enough of that mix to come back to that worm bomb. And them juices of the worms give you enough moisture to get it back as you started. If it doesn't, just add a little bit of water. Out of your casters, you can just put a few drops of water in. Just make it stodgy, makes it stick together. If it was really tough fishing, right, and it wasn't happening, I'd put a little stodge in and then put some dry ground bait over the top. But I don't want to do that because it feels like at the moment that would be the wrong thing to do. The fish are in me peg. I want to get down to the bottom to try and catch the better stamp. So there's all them little things. That's what I love about this style of fishing, is you can mess around with. I've been to matches such as going back to the Acorn match. You know, as the day went on, the fishing got tougher and tougher, but all the skimmers were good. And I had to be really sort of like switched on to topping up. So I put a little ball in, like I said, like that, squeeze it just once, and then a dear little bit of loose like that. And that got me, you know, loads of people come up to me and said, Des, I don't know how you've caught them skimmers. And it's like you're trying to drag them in your peg by putting a little bit of cloud in. It's quite technical, but my God, what a difference it is when you catch. You definitely want one of the days where you could put any volume of ground bait in. But without ground bait, you know you'd have caught, well, you wouldn't even have weighed in. But we will have a little look over that positive line, even though I've only left it a little while. Lovely, isn't it? I think as we went on, I think the skimmers would, little tiny fish after feeding that time, eh? But you've got to expect that. If them little fish are about, you know, you've got to expect that a little bit. You've got to go through them. And this is where you want everything set up. You know, the right hooks, get your pole, the elastics, all your rollers set nice so you're all nice and efficient. In hindsight, I could have probably fished 11 metres. With the fish feeding probably like they are. But it's always a gamble when you're a match angler. Put a leaf on. And when you hook the worm, I don't want those great big massive worms. I want like a medium worm, a bit like that size. Just wash him off and then hook him through the head, and you can nip him off with your nails, and you can have it like that, so it's all nice and straight. You don't want it kicked off at an angle. It's really important. If you have it kicked off at an angle, you get line, you get twist ups and everything, and you also miss bites and you get fish come off. I've not seen, I'm always looking for bubbles as well. I've not seen any bubble. I actually seen one bubble on this line as we started, but I've not seen any other bubbles. It's not always a good thing having bubbles. You know the fish are in your peg sometimes and you can't catch. Very difficult. And that's sometimes when you've got to go past your bait to get away from all the bait you've put in. There you go. Oh, it's come off and I've hooked a leaf, I think. No, I haven't. Yeah, you come off and hooked a leaf then. Come here. It's good practice though. If anybody wants to, you know, come to a venue like such as Riddings where you're getting plenty of bites, it's brilliant practice. How to drop your rig in, hook baits, how to feed. Puts you in real good stead of, you know, ready for your matches. Oh, little tiny. It's just gone a little bit quiet this time. Yeah, slightly bigger fish, look. That's how you want your fishing. Those nice, chunky little skimmers in roach. They're lovely, they are, look at that. Just lovely to swing them on that 6. 4 ounces. You can always put bigger pieces of worm on if if you're trying to catch a bigger fish, then obviously you can put a bigger piece of worm in. But when I'm doing this, it's more about just getting out there, getting another one. Trying to get through the leaves is biggest issue at the minute. Yeah, it's just settled down a bit then, look. That's lovely, that, when it just, you stop catching them fish on the drop. Lovely fishing, that. That's what I get out of bed for. I absolutely love this style of fishing. And like I said, I think as an angler, this makes you an angler. And you can see 6 ouncer there, look. You can see why more and more anglers are getting into this style of fishing. Where I live in the Bristol area, there's more and more people just buzzing about this style of fishing. So again, that was on a thicker piece of worm, sort of a thicker head. And all that makes a big difference. Feeder fishing as well, you can do exactly the same on the feeder with those little bits of worm like that. Drop that between the leaves. Let's see what happens this cast. Them last 2 casts were lovely. So I sat on the bottom waiting, down. Nice dumpy fish. Look at that, there's a little, oh, hello. I'm not sure whether that's foul hooked. Oh, I think it was foul hooked. What a gutter. It looked like a proper little bite, that. Yeah, I reckon that was foul. That was a skimmer, I think. You can just sense it's sort of changed that last couple of times I've dropped my rig in. Had them 2 nice roach. It's got down to the bottom, I've had to wait. Not long, admittedly. So I said, I've got me float. It's not dotted down to an absolute pimple, but it's pretty down. Oh my God, come on. I think worms off. Does feel like a couple of skimmers have just rocked up, and this is what happens. Or it can happen, it's not guaranteed. Fishing's not guaranteed in any means, as we all know. So you get a chunkier piece of worm. Again, in my mind, whilst I'm fishing, I'm thinking about topping up. And if you're getting bites like this, in these conditions, I guarantee you'll be topping up very often. Oh, it's just a pity about these leaves. They've all blown back round at the minute. I just can't quite do what I want to do with my rig. Never be afraid to top up. especially in these conditions. You know, it's mild today. Had a storm last night, which is why all the leaves and that are off the trees. So I had to drop that slightly to the. I had to drop that just slightly to the left because I couldn't get in with the leaves. But I'm going to put another little ball in now. Sometimes if you catch a little fish like that, it's time to go. I'll tell you what. Let's not mess about. Let's put another little ball in. And also, I'm putting sensible size balls in because the fishing's really good. But sometimes in the winter, you might be putting balls in there literally like that big. Nowhere near the size of what I'm feeding. I might just have a little look on my positive line while I'm just waiting for that to. Let me just have a little look. Put a piece of, leave that piece of worm on. I've got a little bit more line on the bottom there. There's not much difference in depths. It's not enough to have another rig, to be honest. Oh, what? I reckon that was foul hooked. Well, there was definitely a skimmer sat over it. I reckon that definitely was foul hooked. Oh, come on, leaves. So just using the ground bait, the little fish might not be so aggressive. If they want them, all them bits of worms and stuff. That's a lift bite, that. You see that rise up then. I think that is a roadshow, to be fair. Nope, little skimmer. Little blade. You know what always amazes me is I can go fishing in the middle of winter when it's absolutely freezing cold. I have two lines like this, and the best line, even though it's the worst conditions, is where you've put a volume of ground bait in. You'd think, like, in the middle of winter when it's freezing cold, your best line would be where you've literally fed very little. But yes, I'm certainly not bothered about that volume of bait. I think that is a roach. Slightly better fish though, to be fair. Brilliant. So you can see it got me float dotted down nice. Enough where I can see any little movements. Obviously enough showing where I can actually see it. Might only get a few on there, I might have to leave it again. Sometimes happens like that, where you go on your main, and this is what happened at Stafford. It's a sort of line where I could go on. Oh, hello. Skin bob that. Not sure that's. It might be foul look. It's like they're sat there. I've definitely had a couple of foul lookers. And these little skimmers, let me tell you, they can be proper. I'd like to say a couple of words on camera, but I'm not allowed. It can be quite difficult to get some days. Oh, it was. Come off. That was actually under the chin. I'll get one in a minute. That was about 6 ounces, that. I've got a nice opportunity to get out there with no leaves there at the minute. Now, whilst you're doing this, obviously this is what happened to me last week. You've got to think about that you're either a negative or your line that you've been fishing. If this line kicked off and I kept catching, I'd have to top that up. You don't just, don't just leave it. That's lovely, that. Oh, a little bubble then. Definitely feels like there's skimmers there on that main line. Well, the positive line. Ooh. Little fish on the drop, that. I'm going to put a slightly bigger piece of worm on it in a minute. Take that little head off. Get a smaller worm. There's some smaller ones mixed in like that. This is where you can mess about your hook bait. So I've got a little stringy bit on there. Just try it. I know what them little skimmers are like. Let's see what happens with that slightly bigger, sort of slightly bigger but stringy bit, a different hook bait. Always try and sort of, my local shop, always trying, when I buy me worms, I do try and get a mixture of decent mediums and maybe a few small ones mixed in. Let's see what happens now. That was a very good bite, but I'm not sure if it's a bite or a liner. It looked like too good a bite to miss, that. That was just as it settled. I know there's some better sized fish there. It's just now getting. That's a better one. That's the ones we want. That's Riddings. That's Riddings fish. That. The matches I've had here, you get an odd better one, but that's your bread and butter fish. They're the ones you want. And let me tell you something, they weigh more than what you think them. You get a nice net of them, it's brilliant. So you can see that bit of worm on there, bit longer. So all them little things that make this style of fishing so attractive to me. Make sure you clean your hook length off. A bit of worms come off. That's the only thing with barbless hooks, obviously. You've got a bit of that going on, but yeah, that's a nice bit of worm. And I can just see this day being bouncing off the two lines. Feels like there's a few better fish on this where I've put the 4 balls in. Yeah, brilliant. Better on that little bit of stringy worm. It's amazing how a fish can sort of not pick up one bit of bait. And like I've always said at the start of this film, if you can catch these, you can basically catch anything. So, slightly bigger piece. Even though they're, you know, only they're little skimmers, you'll be surprised what they'll pick up. Leaves. Oh, leaves. I've got a big ball of leaves coming around here now. But not out where I'm fishing. It's just getting through. So I'm going to drop that, literally drop my hook bait in and flick it over like that and then leave it. So it all goes down very, very quickly. A couple of them skimmers have obviously had it just as it settles. Look at that. Like that. And you see my float now just goes down, catches up with all the shot. You see it all going down nice. And you've got to, you've got to bear in mind, I would still top this up. I'd probably top that up with the same mix as what I put in at the start, with very little in it, really, just using the ground bait. It's got to wait a bit longer, this cast. Oh, there's a bubble come up. I might have to just come off of this and go back out onto that other line. Big lift bite there, look. Oh, come on. Big lifter that was. That would have been one of those little 4-ounce skimmers. Just cut that little bit of worm down. It's quite a thick piece of worm, that. Just get one of those little stringy ones. Have I got any? Yeah, there he is. That'll do. So important, but you've got different hook baits. Like that. Just a stringy bit. And I'm always doing that. I'm always doing that as I'm fishing. I'm trying to find the best hook bait. That last hook bait was probably twice as thick is what I put. I just thought I'd try it just to see. This is one of them stringy little bits of dendra. Very rare I put a tail on. It's always the head part. Straight away, look. Amazing. Probably been nice to have a few red worms, to be honest. So there you go. What? I mean, I'm going to stay on, obviously. But I said, there are your bread and butter fish here. That hook bait, for me, I've got some little baby dendras. You can see that. So important, especially when these fish are in your peg. You have to have those little dendras if you can get them. There's normally some mixed in, you know, very deadly. So there you go. That's my diary piece. This is what I was catching, especially at Stafford Moor. These were the fish you needed to catch. And let me tell you something, some days very, very tricky. And some parts of your match, they're on your main sort of line, you know, where you've put a volume of ground bait in. And other parts, they're on where you're sticking these little sticky balls in with worm, ground bait, a little bit of mixture of... The only thing I will say, what I've done on a couple of occasions was started putting a few more dead maggots in with that pasty mix. So you've obviously got options of that. But just go out and try it. It is deadly. But that, to me, that ground bait that I've used today, honestly, I mean, I've been in some tough areas as well. I've not really drawn in great areas. And that's when you know that you've got all your little bits right. So there you go. I hope you've enjoyed the film. I hope you picked up some nice tips. Remember about the shotting patterns. You know, a lot of my shot, like floats now, is that strung out shot like that. It's quite tight, quite, well, it's quite aggressive really, but it seems to work really well. Catching those little skimmers on the drop, you know, because they're on your ground bait. There's some of them obviously digging into the bottom, and there's other ones floating about, and they see your bait go past, and they're on it. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to carry on, because I absolutely love this style of fishing. Get out there, get on the silvers, get your ground bait right, get your bits right. You don't need a big side tray of bait. And don't forget to like and subscribe on the Sonubaits YouTube channel. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.